Jungkook's sharp reply to Jimin on live TV shocks the entire fandom. What was said sparks chaos, accusations, and raw emotions no one saw coming. "I can't believe you just said that, Jimin." Jungkook's tone was steady, but the weight behind the words was undeniable. The cameras were rolling, the hosts frozen, and every staff member seemed to hold their breath without meaning to. Jimin didn't back down. "I said it because it's true. Or are you going to pretend you haven't been hiding something from everyone here?" The host glanced between them, unsure whether to intervene. The audience murmured faintly, a restless undercurrent. "Hiding something?" Jungkook repeated, leaning forward slightly. "You mean the way you've been acting for months? Avoiding certain topics, cutting me off mid-sentence, making these remarks like you did just now?" Jimin crossed his arms. "At least I don't make decisions behind people's backs. At least I don't act one way in front of ARMY and another behind the scenes." The temperature in the studio shifted. The other members exchanged uneasy glances but stayed silent. Jungkook's gaze locked on Jimin, as if they were the only two in the room. "So you want to talk about behind the scenes?" Jungkook said. "Fine. Let's talk about how you agreed to that deal without even telling the rest of us. Let's talk about you saying yes to something that affects all of us because it benefits you more." "That's not what happened," Jimin shot back. "You think I wanted to be put in that position? I had to make a decision because you weren't there when it mattered." The host finally tried to cut in. "Maybe we should—" "No, let's finish this," Jungkook interrupted, still focused on Jimin. "If you think I wasn't there, maybe ask yourself why. Maybe remember the last time I trusted you with something personal and how that ended up in someone else's mouth the very next day." Jimin's jaw tightened. "So that's what this is about? You're still holding on to that? You think I wanted that to get out?" "It doesn't matter what you wanted," Jungkook said. "It happened, and it wasn't just some random rumor, it was my life, and you treated it like content for your friends." The room seemed smaller now, every word drawing the walls closer. The producers behind the cameras exchanged rapid whispers, clearly torn between letting the drama unfold for ratings or stepping in before it spiraled further. "I never betrayed you," Jimin said, his voice lower but sharper. "But maybe you're so convinced everyone's out to get you that you see betrayal where there isn't any. And maybe you've gotten so used to controlling the narrative," Jungkook replied, "that you can't admit when you've crossed a line." The silence that followed was heavy, not the comfortable kind, but the kind that signals something deep has been damaged. The host cleared his throat, searching for a way to salvage the segment. But before he could speak, Jungkook turned away from Jimin and addressed the cameras directly. "Since we're apparently airing things out here," he said, "let me be clear, this is the last time I'll let someone twist my story without fighting back." The audience reacted immediately, gasps, whispered speculation. The distinct energy of a crowd realizing they'd just witnessed something they weren't supposed to. Jimin sat still, saying nothing. Whether it was restraint or strategy was impossible to tell. Jungkook didn't look at him again as the host, visibly flustered, steered the conversation toward another topic. But the tension didn't dissolve. It lingered, humming beneath the surface, promising that this confrontation was far from over. "Say it here, not on camera," Jungkook says, pushing the dressing room door open just wide enough to point the way. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The hallway is clogged with producers and coordinators trying to be invisible while listening to every word. Jimin steps through without answering. The door clicks shut. The room holds only them, and the unopened bottles of water on the counter become props no one dares touch. "You wanted this," Jimin says first. "You told the world I twisted your story. You said it like a final sentence." "I said I wouldn't let anyone twist it again," Jungkook replies. "If that feels like a sentence, ask yourself why." Jimin moves closer to the mirror but doesn't sit. "I asked you off camera to stop avoiding the subject. You forced it live. You put me in a corner and then told everyone I built it. You put us all in a corner the day you signed that deal without looking anyone in the eye," Jungkook says. "Do you even know what the clause means for the next year? It sidelines joint decisions whenever a solo opportunity looks strategically superior." "Strategically superior to whom?" Jimin doesn't flinch. "We were losing leverage. I was told we'd lose it all if I didn't signal something decisive." "You were told?" Jungkook says. "By who? The person who keeps sending anonymous tips to friendly accounts? The one who thinks fans are buttons you push for impressions? You call that decisive?" "That clause doesn't prevent group work," Jimin says. It prevents stalemate. We both know decisions have dragged because no one wants to risk being the one who ruins the balance. Balance? Jungkook's laugh is brief and dry. There's no balance when the floor tilts under everyone except the person who holds the pen. You think I wanted that pen? Jimin asks softer. Do you really think I enjoyed being the point person the day your personal life exploded into 12 million comments? Jungkook steps closer. You mean the day someone repeated a private conversation I had with you? And you know exactly which part burned me? I told you my biggest fear, and 24 hours later, it was spelled out word for word in a chat I didn't belong to. I didn't leak it, Jimin says. I told no one that exact phrasing. I said you were under pressure. I said you felt watched. That's not a leak. That's concern. Concern ends where repetition begins, Jungkook says. Besides, the phrasing was too precise to be coincidence. Unless language suddenly learned to rhyme with itself. Jimin's jaw sets. So we're back to that. Accusation dressed as certainty. I'm not dressing anything, Jungkook says. I am done with costumes. They stand in silence that is not calm, only crowded. A faint knock arrives, then a voice through the door. 2 minutes to reset interview with the host for wrap-up quotes. Neither responds. Jimin breaks first. If I said I'm sorry for the way you felt, would you believe I meant it? I don't want apology grammar, Jungkook says. I want clean lines. Did you or did you not tell anyone my hesitation was tied to what we talked about at 3 in the morning? Jimin takes a breath that sounds like a decision. I told the manager you were tired of being a headline you didn't write. I told him you needed space to make a call that wouldn't be used as proof of something it wasn't. And the manager told the strategist, and the strategist told the publicist, and the publicist told their favorite reporter, and the reporter told the timeline. Jungkook says, you broke the circle, then say the part you're not saying, Jimin says. Say you think I wanted it out because it made you look careful and made me look brave. Say you think I'm that calculating. Jungkook doesn't blink. I think you're tired of waiting for permission. I think you're allergic to silence because silence has never been safe for you. I think you tried to move the story before it swallowed you. And I think you didn't care who got scraped on the way. That's not calculation, Jimin says. That's survival. Survival has a receipt, Jungkook answers. Who pays it? Another knock. Louder. 1 minute. Jungkook ignores it. You want to fix this? Then stop asking me to pretend it didn't happen. Stop asking me to shrug it off because we have a schedule. Stop calling it miscommunication when it was a breach. Jimin nods once. Okay, then listen to my breach. You disappeared for 3 days before a critical meeting. You ignored calls. You sent one message at 4 a.m. that said not ready. Do you know what the room looked like after that? Do you know how many eyes turned to me like I had a magic key? I disappeared because I knew if I stepped into that room I'd be cornered into saying yes to a shape that didn't belong to me, Jungkook says. I disappeared to prevent an answer I couldn't live with. You disappeared and left me to become the answer, Jimin replies. Maybe I didn't do it perfectly. Maybe I did it selfishly. But I did it, and I'm the one being framed as a traitor. Jungkook's voice is quieter now, but the edge remains. I didn't call you a traitor. I called out the game. If it hits you, maybe you've been playing it too well. Jimin lowers his gaze, then lifts it again. I'm asking you once, not as a rival, not as a headline. As the person who knows what your fear sounds like when you think no one is listening, do you still believe I am safe to talk to? The question hangs, heavier than the others. Jungkook doesn't rush. I believe you want to be. I believe you're not, right now. Jimin accepts the sentence without fight. Then let me earn it. How? Jungkook asks. Start with the clause, Jimin says. I'll push to amend it. No unilateral triggers. No prioritizing solo deals over collective ones without a full vote. No using personal branding metrics to justify group scheduling cuts. If they resist, I'll attach my own penalties. I'll put money on the line. If I violate it, I pay. Not the brand. Me. Jungkook watches him. That's a start, not the end. I know, Jimin says. Then the second part. We co-author anything that references our private lives, even indirectly. Interviews, shoots, copy, captions. If one of us says no, it's no. Jungkook nods once. And the third? The third is not a rule, Jimin says. It's a promise. I stay in hard rooms with you even when the room wants an exit. Another knock, almost impatient. They're ready for you both. Jungkook walks to the door and opens it a crack. 2 minutes, he tells the runner, and the runner disappears like a message that delivered itself. He closes the door again. You're asking for a reset on live television and behind it. I'm asking for truth and a plan, Jimin says. Truth without a plan is a bonfire. A plan without truth is a trap. Jungkook rubs his thumb against his palm once, as if counting seconds. There's one more condition. Name it, Jimin says. No anonymous sources through intermediaries, Jungkook says. If anyone leaks anything from a room we share, we make it public that it wasn't authorized and we don't pretend to be vague about who benefits. Agreed, Jimin says immediately. But that requires you to step into rooms even when you hate them. I'll step in, Jungkook says. But if I step in, you stand with me. I will, Jimin says. They look at the closed door as if measuring how thick it is. Jungkook speaks first. We have to address what happened on stage. Not later. Not in a PR statement. Now. Jimin nods. Then we sit together for the wrap-up. No separate angles. No solo sound bites. They walk back into the hallway. The corridor pretends not to exist around them. Phones lower. Footsteps scatter. The host waits at the edge of the set, wearing the kind of smile that prays for the world to behave. The two of them sit on the same couch where the show began. The cameras find them like conclusions. The host begins carefully. We're live again for a brief closing segment. Before we wrap, would either of you like to clarify anything that might have been intense earlier? Jungkook doesn't wait. I will. What happened earlier was a conversation that should have stayed private but didn't, and that's exactly why it happened the way it did. We've been making too many decisions like we're safer apart than together. That ends today. Jimin adds, I signed something I shouldn't have signed without a full process. That's on me. We are changing it. Our team knows. You know now. No more backdoors. No more half consents. The host blinks, then nods, surprised. That's very direct. Good, Jungkook says. Direct is the only way this works. A producer signals for final remarks. The host gestures. Any last words for ARMY watching tonight? Jungkook preetes once. I said earlier, I wouldn't let anyone twist my story without fighting back. That includes us. If we twist each other, we fix it in front of you, not behind you, not with mystery posts, with decisions. Jimin continues seamlessly. And if you see quotes that sound like chess moves, assume they aren't ours. We will say what we need to say, together or not at all. The host smiles, genuinely this time. Thank you. That's all the time we have. The sign goes to black, then the red light dies, and the room exhales. They stand. Managers move in like cautious weather. One of them starts listing tomorrow's obligations, but Jungkook cuts in. Before anything else, we meet with legal. We amend the clause. Today. Jimin nods. Loop me into the call. I'll make the penalties explicit. The manager begins to push back, offering reasons to delay. Jimin stops him with a single look and a steady sentence. No delay. This is the work. They leave the set together, not touching, not smiling, not posing, just walking in step. The meeting that follows isn't cinematic. It is stubborn. Contracts are language, and language is a battlefield when everyone thinks they are fluent. The legal team tries to reframe. The strategist tries to sandbox. The publicist tries to soothe. Jungkook and Jimin do not move. They don't shout. They don't pace. They repeat the same non-negotiables until repetition itself becomes a hammer. No unilateral triggers. No solo priorities unless a formal vote occurs with documented consent. No personal life references without co-approval. Explicit penalties borne by the violator, not diluted by budgetary fog. No anonymous sourcing from shared rooms, with immediate public disavowal if it occurs. Some hours later, the draft arrives. It doesn't sing. It holds. They both initial the margin, not for pomp, only for memory. There is no applause. There is relief that doesn't ask permission to exist. When they step outside the conference space, the hallway is clearer. Phones still buzz. Trends still trend. Someone has clipped the hurt from the broadcast into quotable shards. Someone else has already written think pieces with confident conclusions laid like tiles. They can't stop that. They don't try. They only agree on the next piece that belongs to them. Jimin breaks the quiet. We should go live, just us, with no choreography. 15 minutes. We talk about the clause and the new rules. We ask the fandom not to take sides but to hold us to these standards. 15 minutes, Jungkook repeats. No teasers, no watch the channel at midnight. We press start and face it. Jimin nods. If the comments turn ugly, we stay. If the comments turn sweet, we stay, Jungkook replies. We aren't doing this to be praised. They settle in a neutral room with bare walls and a single device balanced on a stack of formality. The screen opens a window and a waterfall. Hearts, question marks, accusations, blessings. Jimin starts. We promised directness. Here it is. Earlier today, we fought where you could see it. If you felt worried, you were right. If you felt tired, we were too. But we wrote new rules. We signed them. Jungkook takes over. These rules aren't PR. They're how we avoid using each other as plot twists. We will mess up again. We will also fix it again. You don't have to choose sides to love us. You just have to let us do the work. Questions flood in. Some sting, some heal. They answer the ones that matter, the ones about trust and process and what counts as consent. They refuse the ones about gossip, not with hostility, just with refusal. The live ends without a surprise. It ends with a promise repeated in fewer words. Afterward, they sit in the room that has become less neutral simply because it held something true. Jimin speaks first. You asked how to earn it? That was step 1. Step 2 is slower. I know that. Jungkook nods. Trust isn't a single document. It's a routine. Then let me build the routine, Jimin says. You don't have to thank me. Just call me out if I start turning it into theater. Likewise, Jungkook says. If I start turning fear into a strategy, tell me to stop. A brief quiet settles. Not hostile, not fragile, just honest. Then schedule returns because schedule always returns. People come in with lists again. The lists are long. The world didn't pause to give them room. They take the room anyway. By evening, statements circulate, not the anonymous kind, but the official ones with words cut to the bone. They are boring in the best way. They say what happened, what changed, what will happen next. They do not beg. They do not threaten. They do not try to win a news cycle. In the privacy of a corridor, no one is guarding. Jungkook stops and speaks without ceremony. The thing I said on stage about fighting back, it wasn't about you. It was about me refusing to be passive. If it sounded like a sentence, I understand. I won't deliver it that way again. Jimin answers just as plainly. The deal I signed, it wasn't about leaving you behind. It was fear disguised as decisiveness. I won't call it leadership again. The words don't fix the past. They make the path forward explicit, which is the only fix real life ever offers. That night, their phones fill with opinions wearing certainty like armor. Some people say the partnership is broken. Some say it is reborn. Some say nothing because silence is their version of loyalty. The two of them stop checking after a few minutes. They don't need silence or noise. They need repetition of the right habits. Morning arrives with another meeting, this one with creative directors who wanted edgier angles for the next shoot. Suggestive copy, personal references, a wink toward the rumor mill. Jimin cuts the pitch before it fully stands. We aren't building campaigns on bait. If you want edge, use craft, not our history. Jungkook adds, if the concept needs our private lives to be interesting, the concept is weak. It is not an easy morning, but it is clean. Later, sitting across from each other in a room that's half office, half purgatory, Jimin folds his hands and stares at the tabletop like it contains a map. You once told me your worst fear wasn't being misunderstood, he says. It was being understood and used anyway. I've been thinking about that all day. Jungkook's reply is simple. Then don't use me. Walk with me. Jimin nods. I will. They do not shake hands. They do not hug. They agree on the next 3 steps, and then they take them. A joint rehearsal with no hidden cameras. A meeting with fans organized through official channels. Not a pop-up designed to go viral. A private debrief with their own notes. Not a summary written by someone else. The air between them isn't soft. It isn't cold either. It's structured. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges that know where they begin and end. By the time the week closes, some people have moved on to other spectacles. Others remain, watching with the cautious hope that grows when the shouting fades and the work remains. The story still exists, but it no longer owns them. They own it, imperfectly and intentionally. Jungkook texts Jimin a single sentence before sleep. "Thank you for staying in the room," Jimin replies. "Thank you for reopening the door." No fireworks, no final twist. Only a set of lines they drew together, and the quiet relief of, "We have a leak again," the manager says without preface, leaning against the threshold as if the room might disagree. A clip of the wrap-up segment has been spliced with an old rehearsal note. "It looks like you're contradicting yourselves. It's trending." Jungkook answers first. "What account?" "3 mid-tier channels. 1 big one," the manager says. "The big one is run by the same group that got the tired of being a headline line last time." Jimin folds his arms. "We debunk it on our channels in the same voice as yesterday. No riddles. We show the clause. We say the edit is fake." The strategist steps in from the hall. "We could let it ride for a few hours. You gain sympathy when you're attacked." "No," Jungkook says. "We don't trade on sympathy." Jimin points at the table where the amended clause rests in duplicate. "We just rewired how we work, so we don't use each other as plot twists. That includes public manipulation in our favor. We answer it straight." The legal lead clears her throat. "You can't show the entire clause. There are proprietary sections. But you can show the summary we prepared and reference the sign changes. We can add an addendum for clarity." Jungkook nods. "We'll do it in 10 minutes." The producer appears with a tablet. "Before you go live again, one more thing." The big account quoted a line from an internal call mentioning a coordinated slowdown and attributed it to Jimin. "It sounds like sabotage." Jimin doesn't blink. "Play it." The producer hits the file. A voice that sounds like Jimin says, "If he insists on waiting, then we slow things until the market forces the point." The silence afterward is the kind designed for outrage. "I didn't say that," Jimin says. He looks at Jungkook not for rescue, just for confirmation of the ground under them. "I never used those words." Jungkook studies the transcript. "What call is this supposed to be from?" 3 weeks ago, the producer says. "The calendar shows a budget review. 7 people, all of them internal." Jimin's jaw tightens. "I said we were moving too fast without consensus. I remember saying consensus 3 times. I never said market forces anything." The legal lead sets the tablet down. "We can demand the full raw recording from the media account if they claim it as evidence. They won't hand it over. Better plan. We retrieve our own audio from that day." The IT lead steps in. Already pulled. The phrase doesn't exist. "You said, if he insists on waiting, then we slow the conversation until the group is aligned. It's been edited." The strategist speaks again. "We can weaponize their manipulation. Play righteous. It works." Jungkook shakes his head. "We aren't building a bonfire, we're sealing a hole." Jimin turns to the legal lead. "I want to reveal the structure of that meeting. The names of the departments present, not the people, the seats. Finance, PR, strategy, creative. If we don't hint at the origin, they'll keep doing it." The legal lead hesitates. "It narrows suspicion. It could start a witch hunt internally. Or it signals a line no one crosses without consequences," Jungkook says. "We don't accuse. We describe the process. We insist on audits for every room that touches a quote. We put it in policy." The manager's phone vibrates. "Board wants to talk in 1 hour." "Good," Jimin says. "We want to talk too." They go live in 9 minutes, not 10. No filters, no teaser. Jimin speaks first. Clear and unguarded. A clip is circulating that suggests I advocated a slowdown as a tactic. I did not. The phrase doesn't exist in our audio. The real line was about alignment. Jungkook continues without pause. "We are publishing the clause changes we promised yesterday, and the summary of our private-to-public protocol. We won't benefit from a storm we didn't cause. We will fix the roof that let it in." Questions flood the stream. They answer only what ties to principle. Jimin lists the seats that were present in the meeting from which the false line supposedly came. He doesn't name anyone. He doesn't need to. The structure alone makes the room feel suddenly lit. Jungkook explains the audit they will require for any internal pool that touches a, quote, clip or caption. No anonymous authorizations. No invisible compilers. The live ends fast, on purpose. The board call starts on the dot. Faces populate a grid with practiced neutrality. The chair speaks for the group. The situation is volatile. We need a de-escalation plan. Jimin replies before anyone else. The plan is already active. We made structural changes. We are standardizing consent. We require audits where there were none. A board member leans into his mic. And the narrative that this is an internal sabotage? Jungkook answers even. We are not calling it sabotage. We are calling it unacceptable. We will find the origin. We will address it in policy first, personnel second. The chair taps a pen off screen. There's also a sponsorship team asking if the clause changes expose us to missed targets. Jimin doesn't look away. We can hit targets without burning trust. If your targets require betrayal, adjust the targets. Another board member tries the softer angle. Everyone is aligned on safety, but we can't let emotion dictate operations. Emotion didn't write the edits, Jungkook says. Experience did. The legal lead lays out the audit framework. Every room generating language is assigned a unique marker in its output, invisible to the public but traceable internally. If a phrase escapes, the marker determines the source. The board listens. Some nod. Some stay stone still. Approval arrives because resistance has no clean argument. The call ends. The room seems quieter because everyone else had been loud. The manager remains. We'll need cooperation from PR, obviously. They won't love the markers. Then they can explain why, Jimin says. If the reason is control, we'll find another PR lead. The strategist clears his throat. This could become adversarial fast. It already is, Jungkook says. We're just stopping the pretense. They leave the conference space for a rehearsal no one wants. The director warns them that the creative deck still references a thinly veiled rumor. Jimin shuts it down with one sentence. If we can't sell the work, we won't sell our lives. The team pivot is reluctant, but real. The audit begins before sunset. IT assigns markers, one per room, one per device, one per editor. People complain, not to the protagonist's faces, but to each other. Complaints travel. They always do. Jimin catches one in a corridor where a publicist vents to a coordinator. He doesn't correct her. He doesn't scold. He just says, if you can't defend it in a room with us, don't do it. By night, an email lands in a general inbox. No signature, just an attachment labeled, "You should know." The attachment is a chat log. It shows a string of messages in which someone from strategy forwarded a rough cut to someone outside the company with a note. If we amplify this angle, numbers move. Keep my name out of it. The handle is partially redacted, but the internal marker notifies IT of the device that produced it. They set a meeting for morning. No theatrics. The person they need to talk to sits across the table when the clock hits the hour. She is competent, respected, promoted quickly. She doesn't look regretful. She looks prepared. Jimin speaks first. We have your device marker on the rough cut. We have the forward to an outside handle. We're not here to perform rage. We're here to fix an infection. The strategist's mouth tightens. Everyone moves numbers. That's the job, Jungkook answers. Your job is not to move numbers with lies about us. It wasn't a lie, she says. It was editing. You created a sentence that did not exist, Jimin says. You attached it to a voice that wasn't saying it. That's not editing. That's forgery. She shrugs once. It's not like we weren't heading there. Heading where? Jungkook asks. Toward a narrative that makes us efficient villains? That is lazy marketing. She bristles. The brand thrives on tension. You two have it. I packaged it. Jimin shakes his head. You didn't package tension. You manufactured betrayal. The legal lead repeats the bare facts. The device marker, the forward, the outside handle, the cross-reference with the calendar. The strategist's responses grow clipped. She tries to redirect. She blames pace. She blames pressure. She blames the audience's appetite. None of it moves the table. Jungkook ends it. You're suspended. HR will handle the formalities. We're not making a public scene of you. We're making a private boundary around us. She lifts her chin. You'll lose reach, Jimin replies calmly. We'll lose rot. We can live with that. The door closes behind her. No one cheers. They agree on a short, dry memo to internal teams. Inaccuracies are not tactics. Audits will continue. Violations will be handled. The memo is short enough to remember without a file. Later, they sit together with the manager, the legal lead, and the director of comms. The director asks the question that matters. How do you want to talk about today publicly, if at all? Not with names, Jungkook says. We talk about standards and process. We say there was an internal breach of our new rules. We say it was addressed. We reaffirm the rules. Jimin adds, and we ask the audience to hold us to our own standards. If we slip, they can call it. We've asked them to stop choosing sides. That was for them. This is for us. They record a short video, no flourishes. Jimin opens. We found out a clip was altered to make it look like I said something I didn't. We traced it internally with a new audit system. It's been handled privately and professionally. We aren't naming people. We are naming practices. Jungkook follows. If you see content that asks you to treat us like characters in a game, be skeptical. We're changing how rooms handle our words. We're changing how we handle our own words. We are not perfect. We are trying to be precise. They post it, and then they don't read replies for an hour. Not as a rule, as a kindness to themselves. When they finally skim, the responses are mixed. Some demand names. Some applaud the boundary. Some are bored. Bored is fine. Bored means the spectacle failed to recruit them. The week doesn't end. Weeks rarely do when the machine runs. There is a radio slot. There is a charity meeting. There is a creative review that, for once, talks about music instead of myth. It feels like work. Work is relief. In a quiet room, quiet because fewer people need to be there, Jimin speaks into the almost empty space. You asked me to stop running our lives like a story. I'm trying. Jungkook looks at him. You are. And I'm trying to stop treating my fear as an oracle. It's not always right. Jimin nods. When it is right, it needs input. Then this is the input, Jungkook says. If your instinct says we need to push, tell me first. If mine says we need to pause, I'll tell you first. No more third parties as translators, Jimin says. Only us, Jungkook replies. They draft a small addendum for themselves. Not legal, just practical. If a decision touches personal boundaries, they schedule a direct conversation within 24 hours. If either misses it, the delay is documented with a new time. If a public appearance risks conflating art and gossip, they rewrite the segment or leave. Simple lines. Simple doesn't mean easy. It means clear. A message arrives from the chair of the board. Shorter than expected. Audit framework appreciated. Sponsorship teams aligned. Proceed. It is not warmth. It is not cold. It is permission to keep doing what they already decided to do. They accept it without gratitude or resentment. Not everything warrants a feeling. That evening, a journalist sends a request for a quote. Do you believe fandoms should stop reacting to drama accounts? Jimin types a response and deletes it. Jungkook types one and deletes it. They agree on a final single sentence. We believe people are smarter than the content that underestimates them. They send it. The journalist uses it as is. No spin. A rare event. They do not celebrate. They continue. Before sleep, Jimin writes in a private note app a small list he doesn't share. Words he wants to avoid in public. Betrayal, spin, optics, sacrifice, martyr, empire, destiny. Words that turn people into myths. He leaves himself a reminder to use different language. Consent, timing, clarity, process, repair. The list steadies him. He doesn't need anyone to see it for it to matter. Jungkook, in his own private corner, drafts a short paragraph he plans to keep near. I am not an algorithm. I will not be optimized into a version of myself that produces engagement at the cost of self-respect. If the work succeeds, I want it to be because it speaks, not because it shouts with someone else's voice. He doesn't post it. He doesn't even tell Jimin. He carries it like a pocket rule. The next morning brings an unexpected call. A senior figure from a partner label wants to schedule a collaborative project, fast-tracked, with a press angle that suggests a healed rift made visible for the market. Jimin says no before the sentence is finished. Jungkook offers an alternative. The project can exist, but without the narrative. No ads that insinuate reconciliation as a product. No captions that make a spectacle of private repair. The senior figure mutters about missed momentum. They do not budge. The call ends without a clear yes. which is an acceptable outcome. News cycles continue as they do. New controversies land elsewhere. For once, they do not feel like prey for a storm disguised as weather. They feel like sailors who learned to read the map they should have been using all along. In an off-hours conversation with a junior staffer, a person who's been steady and kind without making a show of it, Jimin asks a careful question. When we were at our worst last month, did it feel like the room wanted us to split? The staffer thinks, then answers honestly. It felt like some people were building plans under that assumption. It felt like they had decks ready with either path, together or apart. They called it flexibility. Jungkook nods. Thank you for telling us. The staffer hesitates, then adds, it also felt like others were waiting for permission to prioritize the work again. They didn't know if it was okay to care about songs more than stats. Permission granted, Jimin says. Please pass it on. She smiles, not as performance, but as relief. I will. Days pass. The rules hold. They strain them. They adjust. The audit framework catches 2 minor infractions with early drafts. Corrections are made. No escalations. People learn. Back in a room where they once spoke like opponents, Jungkook and Jimin sit across a small table and finish a task that used to be background noise, planning a set list. It becomes a conversation about narrative without narrative devices. Which songs belong next to each other because they build something honest? Which transitions need silence? Which collaborations matter because they serve the work instead of the plot? Jungkook asks, do you want to include the one I wrote during the weird weeks? Jimin considers. Only if you want to sing it without turning it into a confession booth. I do, Jungkook says. I want it to be a craft room, not a courtroom. Then it belongs, Jimin says. They agree on the order. They agree on the encore. They agree to deliver it without speeches explaining the meaning. People can feel without being told what to feel. That is the oldest truth, temporarily abandoned and now reclaimed. When the team reconvenes to review, there is some resistance. A director suggests adding a segment where they discuss the journey against a filtered montage. Jimin rejects it. Jungkook backs him up. The director pivots to artistry. The conversation turns to lighting and arrangement and pacing. It is the first time in a while that the notes stay where they belong. At the end of the day, the manager asks if they want to schedule a joint interview to capitalize on goodwill. Jungkook says the quiet part aloud. We don't capitalize on goodwill. We protect it, Jimin adds, and we earn it. They leave the building with lists they want to keep, not the lists that used to chase them. The story that tried to own them doesn't evaporate. It just becomes context instead of content. The difference is the whole point. There is no grand finale to the day, no staged embrace, no engineered closure for cameras or headlines. There is a series of choices that add up to a line that holds. That is enough. And in the new quiet that follows, not blank, just clean, they realize something simple and faithful to the promise they made on a couch under studio lights. If they refuse to twist each other, the world has less to twist. They cannot control what grows outside the walls, but they can control how they build the room. We're being sued, the legal lead says, setting a folder on the table as if it might argue. The media group behind the doctored clip filed a preemptive complaint claiming defamation and restraint of trade. It's performative, but it's still a suit. Jungkook doesn't look away. They forged audio and called it editing. We called it dishonest. That's not defamation. That's a description. Jimin leans forward. What do they want beyond noise? An injunction to keep you from publishing internal summaries and audit markers, the legal lead answers. They say you're stifling the press. We're stifling forgery, Jimin replies. Put that sentence in our response, word for word. The manager rubs his temple. They've lined up experts willing to call your audit system chilling. The word is sticky. Then we line up better experts, Jungkook says. Not the kind that sell adjectives, the kind that build systems. The strategist tries a careful angle. We could settle with a public statement that reiterates support for journalism while softening our tone. No, Jimin says. We already softened everything for years. Look where that got us. The legal lead flips to the next page. They've also requested discovery into your private communications, arguing your new policy affects their access. We can fight that. We will. But they're aiming to drag. Of course they are, Jungkook says. Dragging is the whole business model. The room stills. The director of comms raises a hand. If we go public with the suit, do we name them? We name the suit, not the circus, Jimin answers. We say someone who manipulated our words is trying to control our process. We say we'll fight it. We do not feed their handle into the bloodstream. A notification lights the manager's phone. He glances, sighs, and reads. There's an open letter from a handful of ex-staffers implying your new standards are impossible. They frame it like you're punishing creativity. Creativity doesn't need forged quotes, Jungkook says. It needs trust. Invite them to a panel, Jimin adds. Not for spectacle, for architecture. We'll ask the simplest question. How do you build story without stealing voice? The legal lead nods slowly. A public forum gives us footing, and it shows the court you're arguing principle, not ego. Good, Jungkook says. Schedule it. Record it. Publish it whole. The manager hesitates. There's more. A veteran talk show wants you both. They promise a fair conversation. Jimin shakes his head. Fair on their stage is ratings in a nicer suit. Then pitch the opposite, Jungkook says. No studio, no edits, no surprise guests. A live stream with a moderator we choose. Transcript available. Fact checker. On screen. The comms director blinks. On screen? On screen. Jungkook repeats. If someone says something debatable, a box appears with the source. No ambushes, no memory gymnastics. Jimin looks at the legal lead. Can we do that without inviting a different kind of liability? We can, she says. If the fact checker lists sources and avoids conclusions, done, Jimin says. Let's make the rules visible. The board signs off faster than anyone expects because the alternative is worse. The panel is set for 48 hours from now. Names are invited across the spectrum. Newsroom editors, community moderators, a professor who studies digital trust, a producer who once admitted to crafting narratives with soft lies and left the industry to talk about it. None of this is entertainment. It is framework. Before the panel, a message arrives from a number neither of them saved, but both of them recognize. A senior producer from a rival project writes a sentence that reads like a dare. If you think you're saints, remember the time you let a rumor breathe because it helped a launch. Jimin reads it once and forwards it to Jungkook without a comment. Jungkook replies to the sender directly. We remember the time we were silent because we were tired and naive. We're correcting that now. He doesn't wait for a reply. He doesn't need one. The morning of the panel begins with a new wrinkle. The big account sues again, this time personally naming Jimin for malicious implication and Jungkook for interference with economic expectancy. The legal lead doesn't flinch. They're piling on. It won't work if we're consistent. Consistency is the case. Then give us the lines we repeat until our lungs know them, Jimin says. The legal lead reads without drama. We defend speech that protects consent. We reject content that fabricates speech. We publish our rules so the public can measure us. We protect the work from being harvested by bad faith actors. We will not debate our humanity as a marketing strategy. Perfect, Jungkook says. We'll say it exactly. The panel opens in a neutral venue. Plain background, 2 tables, no audience cheers. Comments visible only to the moderators. Jimin starts. We're here because something basic broke. The boundary between story and person. We are not here to demand special treatment. We're here to propose standards anyone could use. An editor clears her throat. Standards are good in theory. In practice, your audit system could scare sources. Jungkook answers steadily. We aren't marking journalists. We're marking rooms that package our words. If a real source needs protection, they get it. But a fake sentence isn't a source. It's a tool. The professor chimes in. Transparent provenance isn't chilling. It's hygiene. Unknown origins are how infections spread. A community moderator asks a hard question. What about fans who remix your words as commentary? Do your rules risk punishing them? Jimin shakes his head. Fans who remix are part of culture. Our rules are inward-facing. They target rooms that pretend to report fact while selling fiction. Commentary isn't the problem. Counterfeiting is. A producer who once thrived on myth offers a confession with no theatrics. We blurred truth because the platform rewarded speed. Audiences click the story of you more than the work by you. We trained them, and we trained ourselves to justify it. Jungkook doesn't gloat. Training can be unlearned. That's what this is. Then the unexpected happens. A call-in slot opens, and a voice identifies himself as Jimin's brother. The moderators verify identity off-screen in a quick shuffle that lasts longer than anyone likes. The voice returns. Steady. I'm calling because people keep using me in arguments I didn't join. I want to ask both of you a question publicly, so I never have to answer it privately for someone else's leverage. Did my silence last year make things worse between you? Jimin steadies his breath, but not his purpose. It did. Not because silence is wrong in itself, but because I used it to avoid saying I was afraid. I hid behind it, Jungkook adds without delay. And I used your silence as proof that I should assume the worst. I was wrong to treat it like a verdict. The brother continues. Do you want me to answer any rumors attached to my name going forward? No, Jimin says. Not unless you choose it freely. You're not a tool in this. And if I do choose to answer, the brother asks, do you commit to not using it as a shield in your work? Jungkook replies, immediate. We commit. The moderator thanks him. The line closes, and the panel continues in air that feels less polluted. They finalize a short document live, visible to everyone. A pledge to publish provenance for all official content, to decline participation in segments that blur consent, to refuse campaigns that monetize private pain, to invite audits by independent observers twice a year. It isn't a manifesto, it's a checklist. They sign it on camera. The panel ends without applause. It ends with a link. Half an hour later, the media group posts a video claiming the panel was scripted and calling the pledge performative theater. The fact-checker account that helped moderate replies with the time-stamped edit log proving the document was drafted in real time. The argument loses oxygen. It doesn't die, but it thins. A different surprise appears by evening. A rumor that a new solo project from Jimin will launch with provocative branding referencing the conflict. The rumor comes from an insider who has been right before. Jimin calls the creative head. If there's a deck with my name on it that points at this, burn it. If there's a file on a server, delete it. If anyone wants to argue, tell them to argue with me. The creative head hesitates. It's an effective hook. It's a trap, Jimin says. We're not stepping in it. Jungkook texts the same head from his phone. Back him. If it costs money, I'll cover the shortfall personally. The head responds with a simple acknowledgement. The rumor withers. The next day delivers a third suit, this time a bluff from a subsidiary threatening to drop a collaboration unless they return to normal communications. The manager preps negotiation talking points. Jimin shrugs them off. We don't negotiate the right to not be twisted, Jungkook adds. If they drop us because we won't let them wring us out, they saved us time. The legal lead draws a straight line. We'll send a counter letter, proceed with the collab under our published standards, or terminate without penalty. If they blink, we continue. If they don't, we walk. They blink. Predictably. Quietly. Everyone pretends it was a scheduling conflict. No one loses face. No one loses the plot. In the middle of all this, a message arrives from a young trainee in the company. Anonymous, but heartfelt. How do I protect myself from being turned into content before I'm ready? Jimin drafts a reply and sends it publicly through the official channel so it can help more than one pair of eyes. Make your own lines first. Tell your team early what you will not do. Write it down. Share it. If they push, find allies. If no one allies with you, reach us. We won't be able to fix everything. We can at least bear witness and advise. Jungkook adds his own, also public. Build a routine that doesn't depend on validation. It sounds cold. It is freeing. If someone tries to sell your fear as a product, say no out loud where other people can hear it. That turns your boundary into a fact. The responses are a mix of gratitude and cynicism. Both are honest. They accept both. By week's end, the court denies the injunction. The judge's language is terse. The defendant's publication of internal standards is not a restraint on speech. It is expression itself. The media group issues a statement full of heat and no light. The legal lead advises silence. They agree. A longtime mentor reaches out. Someone who once encouraged bolder choices that occasionally bled into spectacle. The mentor asks to meet. They say yes, but on their terms. No nostalgia, no euphemisms. The meeting is brief. He tells them he misjudged the limits years ago and taught them to tolerate being mined. They tell him they participated willingly at times. No one pretends innocence. No one performs absolution. They leave with a clearer map of the past and fewer anchors in it. Later, in a quiet meeting room where lists are usually born, Jimin says what he has been circling for days. I kept a secret because I thought it made me strong. It made me brittle. Here it is, without drama. I was afraid that if I didn't keep moving, I'd be forgotten. I turned motion into a god. I let it dictate the script. I'm done. Jungkook answers in the same key. I kept a grudge because I thought it kept me safe. It kept me small. I turned vigilance into a religion. I let it police every sentence. I'm done. They don't shake hands on it. They don't wrap it in ceremony. They add the realization to the routine they're building. It looks like this. When one of them defaults to old instincts, the other names it without accusation. When a room tries to seduce them back into the myth, they step out and let the room see itself. When a headline pretends to be truth, they either ignore it or meet it with a line that survives scrutiny. 2 weeks after the panel, the pledge they signed becomes an industry reference point, not a trend, a tool. Other artists adapt it. Some managers scoff. Some lean in. A journalist writes a thoughtful piece tracing the difference between accountability and extraction. It circulates further than expected. The comments under it are quieter than usual. Quiet is good. One evening, after a rehearsal that contained nothing incendiary and therefore felt rare, the manager asks if they want to announce anything for momentum. Jimin declines. The manager laughs at himself. Right. Old habit, ignore me. Jimin smiles, not as performance, just as recognition of a shared joke that isn't cruel. We're still unlearning. Jungkook nods. We will be for a while. They set aside time to talk about the next year in terms that aren't market language. What do they want to build that doesn't require their argument as scaffolding? What do they want to study? Who do they want to mentor? How will they measure success without collapsing back into metrics that reward crisis? The list lives in a plain doc with no title that screams. It is short. It is enough. On a public stream meant to celebrate a creative milestone, someone asks the question that once would have detonated the room. Are you two really okay? Or is this PR? Jungkook answers, without dressing it up. We are okay because we are working at being okay. Work is not PR. It is habit. Habits are boring. Boring is honest. Jimin adds, if you want spectacle, you won't find it here. If you want music, you will. The stream ends. The night ends. The machine doesn't. But the way they greet it does. The ground holds because they poured it themselves, level and visible. They don't confuse attention with care. They don't confuse conflict with depth. They don't confuse exposure with honesty. They keep the lines they drew when the lights were hottest, and in keeping them, they start to write a chapter that reads like a life rather than a product. We're not doing the studio ambush, Jungkook says, tossing the proposal back across the table. No mystery guests, no montage, no bait. The comms director exhales. Then you should know what they've planned if you refuse. They'll air a roundtable without you and reconstruct your answers from prior interviews. It'll look authoritative. Jimin leans in. Then we counter with something they can't reconstruct. We go live with third-party moderators again, but this time we bring the people who were actually in the rooms. Legal, PR, strategy, creative. Not strangers. Names and roles. On record. The legal lead nods. I'll sign the waivers and indemnities. It'll frighten some, but if they decline, that tells its own story. The manager hesitates. You will get accused of strong-arming staff to perform loyalty. We won't ask for loyalty, Jungkook says. We'll ask for facts. A knock at the door. The IT lead steps in. You should see this. He lays down a printout of a group chat from months ago, formatted and watermarked by the audit system. A former executive is telling a talent agent to push a fracture narrative because uncertainty sells. Jimin reads it once. This is it. This is the spine. We don't expose personal screenshots. We expose this, the architecture. The legal lead considers. We can publish with names redacted and roles visible. It's enough to show design without turning it into a witch hunt. Do it, Jungkook says. Today. By midday, the redacted thread is public. Timestamps, role labels, the sequence of instructions that moved a rumor from a conference room to a headline. No dramatic music. No arrows on screenshots. Just the pipeline. The post includes 2 paragraphs, calm, exacting, unadorned, about how rooms should not be allowed to manufacture a version of people to meet quarterly benchmarks. The reaction is immediate. Some praise, some deflection, some sudden appeals to complexity. The industry press tries to call it naive. Then an independent editor posts a forensic breakdown confirming what the pipeline implies. A cottage industry was turning hesitation into content, argument into fuel, silence into currency. It was never about songs. It was never about songs becomes a trending phrase for a few hours. Jungkook and Jimin don't engage with the trend. They stick to the plan. The live forum begins with no countdown theatrics. A plain title card, a timestamp, a line across the bottom that reads, "We are showing our work." The moderator welcomes viewers, introduces each participant by role, and makes the boundaries clear. No speculation, no gossip, only process. The first question comes straight. Why did this take so long? Jimin answers without softening the blow. Because I confused speed with purpose and thought that if I kept moving the machine, it would start serving me. It didn't. I served it. Jungkook adds, because I confused vigilance with safety and treated every sentence as a potential trap, I starved the rooms that needed trust. The moderator turns to the PR director. Why did you sign on to an audit system that limits your control? The PR director glances at the doc on the table and says, because control isn't credibility. We kept trying to spin reality until reality spun us. The creative head follows. We were told to make heat. We forgot to make meaning. That's on me, not on algorithms. The legal lead outlines how the redacted thread came to light and why it matters. Everyone thinks about momentum. That's normal. But the moment you begin to plan harm as a tactic, you've left publishing and entered extraction. A hand raises offset. The moderator nods. A remote guest appears. It's the judge who denied the injunction. She won't discuss the active case, but she speaks to the principal with careful neutrality. Transparency is not censorship. It is a counterweight. Your policy is a form of speech. It may inconvenience some actors, but inconvenience is not a legal injury. A journalist joins by phone with a question that cuts. If you win this fight, will you become the new gatekeepers you say you oppose? Jimin doesn't dodge. Yes, if we start believing we're exceptions to the rules we wrote. That's why we publish them, so they bind us too. Jungkook nods. Our power is procedural, not personal. If we try to turn it personal, you should ignore us. A staffer from Strategy, the one suspended weeks ago, has submitted a statement through counsel. The moderator reads it. Contrition mixed with justification. References to pressure and culture. The familiar deflection of responsibility into air. The moderator asks if they want to respond. Only with policy, Jungkook says. We've already responded with HR. Policy and a line, Jimin adds. We will never again reward a lie that flatters us while punishing a truth that costs us. The moderator moves to the hard part. There's a leaked claim that Jimin approved a provocative solo rollout referencing the conflict. Is that accurate? No, Jimin says. If anyone presents such a plan, they don't work with me. And you, Jungkook? Are you refusing collaborations that rely on drama? Yes, he says. If a campaign needs our private lives to be legible, the campaign is bad. The chat explodes with questions and confessions and bait. The moderator steers the conversation to the pledge they signed, provenance, consent, audits, independent review. They add 2 more lines live. 1. Any charitable initiative they lead will publish transparent accounting and will not be timed to coincide with a scandal. 2. Any documentary or long-form feature that involves them must embed a researcher who reports directly to the audience on process, with veto power over reenactments that drift from truth. The forum ends quietly. No calls to smash like buttons. No promises of bonus footage. A final, almost plain sentence on the screen. If you want something better, demand receipts. The stream goes dark. By nightfall, the first suit fractures. A co-plaintiff withdraws, citing material misunderstandings about the audit scope. The media group posts fury. The world moves on faster than fury can keep up. But the real storm comes from a direction no one scripted. A veteran host, one of those faces that built a career on charming access, goes live and says into his camera, "Something changed in how these artists talk to us and I dislike it because it reveals how lazy we got. He pauses. They forced me to clean up my shop, so I'm doing it. He publishes his booking policy. No segments built on rumor, no unnamed sources, no questions designed to extract a headline at the expense of the person. Some viewers call it performative. Some call it overdue. Either way, it echoes. Morning brings letters. Not the legal kind, the old kind. Printed, folded, carried, delivered. A box arrives from a community of fans who rarely agree on anything. Inside, there are 2 short notes. The first says, "We wanted blood last month. We were wrong. We want better now." The second says simply, "Please don't forget the music." They read both twice. They keep them. A planning meeting turns into an argument. The choreographer proposes a mid-show segment that dramatizes conflict resolution with on-stage dialogue. Jimin shakes his head. "We aren't staging therapy." Jungkook is firmer. "We're not teaching the crowd to crave reconciliation as a scene. They can hear the songs and decide for themselves," the choreographer argues. "It's cathartic. It's codependency," Jimin says. "We don't serve that." The manager tries to split the difference. "What if we build a small interlude that gestures toward the season without spelling it out?" "Only if it points away from us," Jungkook says. "Use visuals that celebrate process. Drafts becoming songs. No faces, no clips from talk shows, just work." The rehearsal that follows is a study in restraint. They carve a show that refuses to rely on exposition and refuses to pander to curiosity. The transitions are built on craft rather than confessional. When they disagree about an order, they don't frame it as drama. They resolve it as editors of a shared narrative. They move faster than they did when they were flinching at each other's shadows, not because the tension is gone, but because it has a job now. The night before the first performance under the new rules, the board asks for a final alignment call. The chair wants reassurance that the show won't,